There are 90 million registered Christian voters in America. The last 3 presidential elections were decided by an average of just 5 million votes. If Christians get involved, we can change the tune of this election. Our faith matters. So when we all work together, we make our country a more beautiful place for everyone. Together, we can make a difference. Make the pledge to vote from a biblical worldview, because what we believe matters.
Hi, I'm Abby Johnson. I'm so glad that you're here. A lot of people ask me, Abby, how do I get involved in the pro-life movement? And I don't really have just a specific answer for you because I don't know how you're being called to fight for the right to life. But I know that if you're here, you are feeling that call. And I do believe that we are all empowered and equipped to fight for the sanctity of human life. So here's some ideas. 1, go and pray outside of an abortion facility. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to have some sort of magical words of wisdom for the women walking in. In fact, if you aren't trained as a sidewalk advocate, I would encourage you not to say anything. But the power of you being there, the power of your prayers is so vital. It's critical because you are bringing hope to a place where women feel like they have none left. Maybe you feel called to get involved with your pregnancy resource center. There are local pregnancy resource centers all across this country. There's over 2,500 of them, and they rely on people like you. They rely on volunteers. They rely on your talents, your treasure, your time. So maybe that's an area that you could get involved. And you might say, well, I don't know what I could possibly bring to a pregnancy center. Well, you won't know until you ask. So they will find a place for you if that's where you feel like you're being called. Our goal is not just to make abortion illegal. It's to make abortion unthinkable. And that's where you come in. By getting involved, doing something, doing anything. Don't just be an apathetic pro-lifer. Be an active pro-lifer.
You know, as Christians, the Bible calls us to be salt and light to influence our culture. That starts with the choices we make in the voting booth. Today we are facing an all-out attack on our religious freedom. Laws are being passed both here and across the globe that continue to erode our rights to share the gospel and to live our lives according to the Bible. And courts are now ruling that laws that have protected our churches and businesses for decades are unconstitutional. If we don't turn things around soon, the America we have grown up with will be gone, right along with our freedoms. This November, cast your vote from a biblical worldview, and together we can turn America around.
Sometimes I think that our standards are so high for who we want to get elected that if we don't make those standards, we think we've lost. I'm not really sure I can get somebody who's like me. I'm not even sure I can get somebody who's for me, but I'm pretty sure I can get somebody who's not against me. And somehow during this time, we have to get to the polls and get somebody who won't be against us so we can continue to preach and teach the Word of God. If you don't vote, you are not expressing your faith. That is not the right way to be a Christian. If you're going to be a Christian in election year, part of your Christianity is going to the voting booth and making a selection.
Welcome back to another episode of The Voice. It is our intent to bring you some candidates who share our values of life, marriage, and family leading up to the election. And tonight we are so honored to have one of my very favorite, our state treasurer, Dale Folwell. Welcome to The Voice, Dale.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're so excited. So tonight, Dale, I'm going to try to get to your story.
Sure.
So. And there's a lot to tell about you. So, Treasurer Folwell, you really have an exceptional story. I mean, you were born in Winston-Salem, and I read that you began your career as a blue-collar worker, making a living with your hands and your back. Working your way through college, you eventually obtained not only a bachelor's degree, but also a master's in accounting from UNC Greensboro. And then you became a CPA and then a vice president at the investment advisory firm of Alex Brown. And I think you're a forensic accountant.
That's correct.
Yeah. So how has your background prepared you for the job that you have today as state treasurer?
Well, my background, as you mentioned, is steeped in blue-collar work. And when you make your living with your hands and your back and feet, as so many North Carolinians do, you have to learn how to do things correctly and quickly, because if you're on the lower end of the economic scale, society doesn't give you many opportunities to make mistakes. So I'm probably the least likely person to ever be elected the state treasurer of North Carolina, the keeper of the public purse.
Not true.
Yeah. Well, but managing an amount of money, just the pension plan we manage is the 26th largest pool of public money in the entire world. But I'm standing on the shoulders of a lot of people who got me to this point, people who expected the best out of me, but yet wanted the best for me. And through that process, I learned that you surround yourself with people with integrity, ability, and passion, and they may be rock stars at the last two, but if they don't have integrity, eventually they'll get you in trouble. And that's how I got to where I am.
That's great. That's great. Now, you've had quite a diverse career in public service, and you spent 8 years on the Forsyth County Board of Education, 8 years in the North Carolina House of Representatives, and you rose there to be the Speaker Pro Tem, and then you spent 4 years as the Assistant Secretary of Commerce while you were in charge of the Unemployment Security Division. And so tell me how those experiences have shaped your view of state government and its duties to the people of the state.
Well, whether it's on the school board or as a member of the legislature or a member of the governor's cabinet, I realize that there's so many tools, so to speak, that I use that came really from my blue collar experience. You know, when you're a motorcycle mechanic, you listen, you act, and you fix. And that's what I've tried to do during my whole public service career, is listen, act, and fix things that really impact people. I have always had the philosophy that if you attack problems and don't attack people, that no matter what party you're a member of or where you are in the seniority process, that if you can find a way to save a mind, save a life, or save money for the citizens of this state or my local community, that there's always an opportunity to do that.
That's wonderful, and what an interesting background you have. I think I know you to be that person that you just described too. As a state legislator, you authored 29 pieces of legislation. Whew. I mean, as a lobbyist, I know how hard it is from personal experience to get one bill passed. So what are some of the bills that you're proud to have passed into law as a legislator?
Well, I'm most proud of the fact that for 6 of those 8 years, I was in the minority party, as you know, from traveling the halls of the General Assembly, that my seat numbers was 104 or 114. You know, I was on the back row. But as I said earlier, I found an opportunity, even with a Democrat speaker, a Democrat president pro tem, and Democratic governors, to get meaningful, substantive pieces of legislation through the chambers and to the governor's desk. And what I'm most proud of is the fact that Governor Easley nor Governor Perdue vetoed any of those 29 major pieces of legislation.
That is amazing, especially in light of our present governor. And I think I know you to be the legislator throughout my career, lobbying in the General Assembly, who was able to work across the aisle the most.
Work across the aisle because I was able to show them how this impacted them and the people that they serve. And as I said earlier, you know, the root word of conservative is to conserve. the root word of liberal is to liberate. The conservatives haven't conserved very much, and the liberals haven't liberated very much. But as I said earlier, if you find a way to save a life, save a mind, or save money, then it all makes sense. In terms to directly answer your question, the thing I think probably has saved the most lives is the Heart Prevails legislation, which cemented the heart on your driver's license as a first-person directive. You know, millions of North Carolinians had that heart on their driver's license, but it was meaningless in the eyes of the law. So no first responder or emergency room nobody could rely on that as the wishes of the decedent. And we were one of the top states with the heart, but we were mid-pack in terms of organ donations. Why is that? Because nobody could rely on the heart, because nobody had codified it in the law for 20-some years to say this is what the decedent actually wants. And in the first year of that law's of enactment, organ transplants went up 58% in the first year. So
that's incredible.
That's an
I
example.
remember that bill.
Yeah, that's an example of saving lives. Saving money, probably things that reduce the bureaucracy, like combining not the inspection, but the registration of your vehicle with the payment of the property tax. And this is a piece of legislation where the state government really had very little to gain by it passing. Basically, the only savings to the state government was about $7 million in postage, because 20 million times a year, people had 5 interactions with government just to renew the tag on your car and pay the property taxes, because they would send you a registration, you would send it back in, and then the property tax people would send you a property tax bill, and then you would send that back in. So we cut all that down so it's all on one bill and one statement, and that's saving over $200 million this year. And most of that, all of that money goes to counties, cities, and or volunteer fire departments who have desperately needed it the whole time, but especially in this COVID environment.
Wow. So even as a state legislator, you were saving the state money. Yeah. So then when you took over the Unemployment Security Division, you inherited the most broken unemployment system in the United States. That's what it says on your website.
Right.
And the state of North Carolina had a debt of $2.7 billion to the federal government when you took over for unemployment benefits. So how did the state incur such a large debt, and what did you do to pay it off?
Well, that debt got incurred the way an ant eats a ham biscuit. one bite at a time. And what happened is we had a surplus in the Unemployment Trust Fund. So I need to tell your viewers that this Unemployment Trust Fund needs to be thought of like Farm Bureau, State Farm, or Geico. It is an insurance company. It gets premiums from employers, and it pays out money to claimants. It's really like its own insurance company, even though it's run by the state. And the Unemployment Trust Fund had a surplus. We got attacked on 9/11. We went into a recession. The Unemployment Trust Fund got depleted to negative. And the reason that is important to your viewers, especially those who wake up thinking about SUTA and FUTA, which are excise taxes on payroll, that when those balances go to negative, the United States Department of Labor starts charging a surcharge on all the payroll of all the businesses across the whole state. So it went negative after 9/11, and then it went positive again, but the surcharges were there. And then right at the point when the Unemployment Trust Fund was getting back in good shape, then we were hit with 2008, the great financial crisis.
Right.
And then it went into debt, $2.6 billion. So what that means is that every week, as the head of that agency, when I had to pay out benefits, I had to borrow that money from the federal government and pay interest on it. And all the while that was going on, the payroll taxes on the employers of this state cumulatively were going up every 12 months.
Wow. So what did you do to solve that problem?
Well, what I did was I listened. The thanks goes to the employers of this state who were charged surcharges, and that money kept coming in order to pay off the debt and ultimately build a surplus, which we are desperately using right now as we speak. And so what I try to do is push the power away from myself as the Assistant Secretary of Commerce in charge of that agency, and push the power down to those who are adjudicating the claims, those on the call center who are taking those calls from these people who are in these situations. And that's how we were able to do it. We had some fantastic ideas that saved tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars from ideas that people had had for a long period of time, simple things that no one had ever listened to. And, you know, it's just another example as I close to answer your question is that, you know, working at Vision Employment Security is pretty much like working at the Treasurer's office. No one calls us to book a cruise. They call us because they've had a life-changing event. Most are blessings, but some are not.
Wow. That's a great analogy. So I just want to note for our viewers that he paid off this deficit, this $2.7 billion deficit in the unemployment insurance fund, and created a $1 billion surplus in 30 months. That's pretty amazing.
I was just the mule, but other people were the brains. And starting with the employers who kept paying into the system. So all the real credit, as usual, goes to the taxpayers.
Right. I love how you give credit to the taxpayer. That's great. It is our money after all, right?
That's what my billboards say, because it's your money.
Yeah, I saw one. I saw two actually
two.
this past weekend. In 2016, then you were elected as the state treasurer, the 28th state treasurer, and you've served there now for 3.5 years. And Treasurer Folwell, many of our listeners may not even know what the state treasurer does, and we're going to talk about that tonight. But I think you've referred to your job as the keeper of the public purse.
Right.
So, what was your goal when you took over the treasurer's position?
My goal was to continue my public service, to continue to fix things, and there was a lot of things that needed to be fixed. But mainly my goal was to maintain the loyalty and duty of care to those that teach, protect, and otherwise serve. You know, we manage almost $200 billion when you add in the banking operation and everything else. And that money does not belong to Wall Street, it does not belong to big healthcare, and it doesn't belong to big drug companies. It belongs to the participants of these plans and taxpayers like them. When Harlan Bowles, who wrote the book Keeper of the Public Purse, when he left office, and for example in 2001, this pension plan was 110% funded, had every dollar plus 10 cents.
Wow.
And the Wall Street fees that Treasurer Bowles was paying had gone at that time from $50 million to when I was sworn in 16 years later to $700 million per year, just in Wall Street fees.
Wow. And the former state treasurer wasn't monitoring that?
Well, they were going up.
Yeah.
And you know, when I talk about being the state treasurer, some people think that I signed the $1 bill because that's where they most often see the word treasurer. It's normal to think that. We don't sign the $1 bills, but we manage the 26th largest pool of $1 bills in the world, and it's $200 billion, and it's 8 times the size of the North Carolina budget.
So you're really managing more money than the governor is. And under your leadership, the pension plan was rated among the top 5 highest funded in the country. And it's won accolades for proactive management and funding discipline. And then in 2018, the state's coveted AAA bond rating was reaffirmed by every major agency, and making North Carolina one of only 13 states in the country to hold that distinction. So I just want to say congratulations and thank you for managing the state pension fund so well. And as you can see, it's very important to make sure that the keeper of the public purse is qualified and a fiscal conservative instead of an Obama-style Marxist who's pushing a liberal agenda. So Treasurer Folwell, it is a great responsibility to manage a $100 billion fund that state employees are counting on for retirement. What principles have you followed to get such high marks as you're managing the fund?
Well, the principles, number one, is a lot of things you just talked about are a credit to the investment management team who works at the Treasurer's office, and really previous state treasurers who have never pretended to have a crystal ball or been willing to gamble with the hardworking money that belongs to those who teach and protect and who serve. As I was talking earlier about no one calls the Treasurer's office to book a cruise, at the end of the day, when we can have a long conversation about life expectancies and assumed rates of return and asset allocation models, what we're really in is the check delivery business. And last month, and this happens every 30 days, we sent out $540 million worth of pension benefits.
Wow.
For one 30-day period.
That's incredible.
320,000 participants. People want to know that their money is being managed conservatively, and that people are managing it who don't pretend to have a crystal ball.
That's a tremendous responsibility. I'm sure it keeps you awake at night sometimes.
I rest well. And actually, since that report came out, Moody's, one of the rating agencies, determined that we have actually the #1 pension plan in the United States in terms of its ability to stay funded during economic uncertainty.
What a blessing.
They said that in October, before anybody even knew about COVID-19.
Is that right?
And my point of saying that, we've experienced and continue experiencing, and we will be experiencing for a very long period of time, a tremendous economic uncertainty and volatility. The AAA bond rating is something that all of your viewers can agree on. And that is this: when you have to borrow money to invest in public education, public safety, public roads, or public works, being able to do it at the lowest possible interest rates, just like buying a home, means you can buy more of whatever it is that you're trying to purchase. That's why this coveted AAA bond rating is so important.
So if you're a state employee, you can rest assured this man is taking care of your retirement, even through COVID-19.
And the State Employees Association feel the same way. I think I'm the first Republican state treasurer ever to be endorsed by the State Employees Association of North Carolina.
I know that one of your goals has been transparent health care. And so what do you mean by that? And how have you tried to accomplish this as it relates to the state health plan?
Well, the blood that runs through me is Quaker. And one of the spices of the Quaker religion is to be fair and just. So we get to do that every day at the Treasurer's office. State health plan has this about the same amount of buying power as Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, Jamie Dimon's JP Morgan, and Jeff Bezos' Amazon.
My goodness.
If you combine the employees that work for those three companies in the United States together, that's us. So is there,
I had no idea.
You're right. Well, most people say, "Are you serious?" But you've stopped saying that since you've known me for
You
a while.
wanted me to say, "Are you serious?"
But my point of saying that to you is that, is there any reason that you or your viewers can think of as to why the largest purchaser of a product in this state should not be able to do it better and more efficiently on behalf of those that teach, those that protect, and those that otherwise serve?
No reason at all.
And this is why this should matter. We have beginning troopers, beginning teachers this year who have to work 1 week out of every 4 to pay the family premium on the state health plan.
Really?
Are you serious?
Are you serious?
I am. And it's mathematical.
Yeah.
Now, I can't do anything about what people make, but I sure can take advantage of our buying power. And all we're trying to do, this is the most complicated thing that you'll ever hear, or your viewers will ever hear. All we're trying to do is to get rid of secret contracts, have transparent billing, and push the power to the consumer. You know, today, and you'll get there one day, today is Senior Citizen Day at Food Line. So that means if I were to go there today, I would get my senior citizen discount. You know, tomorrow's Senior Citizen Day at Harris Teeter. And my point is that it's a kind of a silly example, but it's not. If you push the power to the consumer will ultimately figure out the value and the cost of things. Healthcare is the only thing in their lives that they spend 20% of their income on. And even after they've consumed it, they don't know the value or the cost. I attempted this, when people go and consume healthcare, they get something like this in the mail, an explanation of benefit.
Right.
Now, some of your viewers know that I had an intensive battle with COVID-19 toward the end of March. I couldn't tell you if that explanation of benefit was my gallbladder removal 5 years ago or it was COVID-19 treatment, because you can't look at a bill that people send you and determine what it was for or what the value was.
Right.
So as I attempted to get to the bottom of this, I sent a letter to UNC Healthcare. And that should be familiar to your viewers because it's owned by the taxpayers.
Yes.
Just like the Treasurer's office. We're all sort of in the same family. And I sent them a nice, genuine letter and said, last year we spent over $300 million with UNC Healthcare on behalf of those that teach, protect, and otherwise serve. We know what you billed us. We're trying to figure out what we're supposed to pay. And I'm going to show this to your viewers. This is what was returned to me by UNC Healthcare, the master charge list.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you. And every single page was redacted.
Wow.
Now, why would somebody send that? Because they don't want you to know.
Exactly. They're covering up something.
Well, they just don't want you to know what things
What
cost.
you're paying.
Because if you knew, you may be able to compare quality and value. And all I want is one simple thing. When people pull their health plan card out of their pocket and they hand it off to somebody, they don't know the value and price of what they're getting. Nobody, none of your listeners, viewers, not one, pulls one of these out of their pocket and they don't know generally what the value and the price of what they're buying.
At the grocery store.
Or any item.
Yeah.
Except with healthcare.
Right.
And my optimism on this subject is twofold. Number one, we had 25,000 providers of healthcare, like Trine Medical in Charlotte. 25,000 providers of healthcare who said yes. We don't want to have any more secret contracts. We're going to tell people exactly what things cost.
Really?
And that's it. But all the hospitals basically boycotted the state health plan, even after we offered them a 200% profit. These are non-profits.
So they're making more than 200% profit now, is what
Absolutely.
that means.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And all we're trying to, and my optimism is this. Just think if we were known as the state with transparent, quality, accessible, low-cost health care. Imagine what that would do to help lower income people. Imagine what that would do for economic activity and business recruitment.
Well, it would certainly drive the cost of healthcare down for everyone else.
Correct.
If the major consumer of healthcare drove the price down for their
Sure.
patients.
Sure.
So, yeah,
And
it's a great concept.
As you know, from walking the halls, sometimes we work on these issues and everybody says, well, that's just for business, or that's for business, or they're doing this for business.
Mm-hmm.
I want to remind your viewers who the biggest employer in this state is. It's the state.
Mm-hmm.
The second biggest employer, school systems. Third biggest employer, the counties.
Wow.
The fourth biggest employer are the cities combined.
Wow.
So my point is, we're not doing this quote for business because the biggest business in this state
Is government.
is government.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible to think about. And recently I noted that President Trump came out with almost the same approach to transparency as it applies to Medicare. And I just wanted to ask you, doesn't that validate your approach to transparency, that President Trump thought of it also
Sure.
after you did, I might add?
We launched this about 2 years ago. The president came out with his executive order about a year after that. And actually, he's been sued by the Hospital Association to keep people from knowing what they pay for something. So as former Congressman John Lewis used to say, or I heard during some of his tributes recently, it's okay to get into good trouble.
That's funny.
And I've gotten in a lot of good trouble as the keeper of the public purse in the last 3 years.
You have.
As I focus on my loyalty and duty of care to the participants.
So, how has Governor Cooper mismanaged the transportation fiasco, and what are the lessons learned here?
Well, the lessons learned are number one, that if you separate the North Carolina Department of Transportation, it would be a multi-billion-dollar company, probably one of the largest companies in North Carolina. Number two is, as Governor Martin used to always say, doing right's rarely wrong. And what has happened is the Department of Transportation they were literally writing checks they couldn't cash. That's kind of treasurer humor. But they were writing checks they couldn't cash. And ultimately, as you said, they eviscerated the Highway Trust Fund. And then, as the state auditor just recently pointed out, during this whole fiasco for 2 years, they paid out $40 million of illegal salary increases. But it wasn't just the salary increases. That created $179 million of unfunded liability in the pension plan. But I just remind viewers about what Coach K always said, and that is that they asked him about his courtside manner, and he said, listen, some things that happen right in front of your eyes are worth getting upset about. And the reason why this impacts the Treasurer's Office is this overspending has gotten the attention of the rating agencies. Since it is the largest piece of the North Carolina budget, they want to know what's going on. And so when it starts to potentially impact the rating agencies in North Carolina, that's why we're so curious and interested.
So as a result of the COVID-19 virus, we've had 854,000 people that have lost their jobs in North Carolina. And the tax revenues are down, which has created a deficit for the first time since the Republicans took control of the General Assembly. And I just wondered if you could tell us, Treasurer Folwell, how was North Carolina prepared or positioned to handle an economic downturn like the one we've suffered under the China virus?
Great question. I would not trade places with any other state treasurer in the United States of our size. But we have to get the policies correct to take advantage of us being well positioned to pull out of this stronger and faster than anyone else. And we cannot have policies that are done in secret. We can't have policies that aren't driven by data. We can't have policies where somebody, every time you challenge an assumption, it's called political.
Right.
We can't have policies that are inconsistent. Why is this person able to open their business and I can't? I mean, all that just loses, faith in government. So we have to get the policies right. We have some counties, for example, between where we're sitting and the Outer Banks, that the population of the entire county is about equal to Myers Park High School in Charlotte. And one of these particular counties has had 50% of their property taken off the tax rolls because it's owned by the federal or the state government.
Wow.
And on top of that, because of COVID, people being locked down, not mobile, can't consume. And when you can't consume, you're not generating the income, the gas, the sales, and the occupancy taxes.
Right.
Because of that, this county has also suffered a 25% decline in sales tax.
My goodness.
So half your property doesn't get taxed.
Yeah.
You've had a 25% reduction in sales tax. The number of people there is about equal to the population of a high school. How do you mathematically fix that?
Yeah.
And
it
that's
seems
what,
impossible.
It does, but it's not impossible. But the first thing you have to do is acknowledge it. They're not invisible. We're all happy to have really strong, healthy torsos. But, the rural North Carolina reflects the arms and the legs of our state, and we need to make sure they're strong also.
So you've mentioned it a couple of times that you contacted COVID-19, and I just wanted to ask you, what was it like?
Well, the first thing is you realize pretty quickly that there's a difference between being religious and being spiritual. Secondly, for the longest period of time, maybe even with you, I was the only person anybody had ever heard of who had COVID.
Yeah.
I was talking about mid-March.
Right.
Then I was the only person anybody had heard of who was in intensive care with COVID. And then I was the only person anybody had ever heard of over the age of 60, now that we know, with an A blood type who literally who actually...
You have an A blood type?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Who lived through COVID. And then for the longest time, as people kept hearing this word asymptomatic, I'm the only person they don't really know what asymptomatic is, but now they're actually looking at it and hearing from it. And I put this in biblical terms: yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I hope this is true tomorrow. I've never had a shortness of breath, never had a fever, never had a headache, never had GI issues, never had lost a taste or smell. Never. But my body was rejecting oxygen.
Wow.
Even with 8 units of oxygen being given to me, it was rejecting oxygen.
Wow.
When they ultimately took a picture of my chest, you could barely see the outline of the heart or the diaphragm, which are two things you're supposed to see when you look at a chest x-ray. So I'm very actually just fortunate, the grace of God and some caregivers in the hospital who came in and squeezed my hand at the right time. But 2 quick things about that, because I know you're running short on time. My whole life has been within 3,000 yards of where I was lying at the Baptist Hospital. My house was where the helicopter landed, because we rented a house for $100 a month. My mother was a switchboard operator. I ate all my meals at the cafeteria. I was the paper boy at the nursing school and the med school. I was one of my first jobs was at Cloverdale Shell, right beside the hospital. So as I was looking out the window and I was analyzing all these things, I was really focused on like my life.
I bet.
The next day they came and turned my bed around because they could tell when I was analyzing the monitors, and they could tell what impact it was had on my breathing, and what they really needed me to do is breathe.
Oh, wow.
They turned my bed around. This was Monday, and as soon as I got there, they gave me hydrochloroquine and Z-Pak. I didn't request it; they just gave it to me. And then I went through Monday, and now I'm looking out toward the hallway. And this drug puts you in a very deep sleep. It's not nightmarish or deja vu-ish. It's just a deep sleep like I've never experienced. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, I see a lot of activity outside my door. And I've been observant enough in the last 48 hours to know what was getting ready to happen. And I woke up from this deep sleep, and all I could think about was that scene in the Shawshank Redemption between Timothy Robbins and Morgan Freeman, where Timothy Robbins says it's best to get on with living or get on with dying, Dale.
Wow.
And I knew that what was outside of that door was a ventilator. And I knew that the odds of me surviving, it has helped a lot of people, don't get me wrong. But I just thought my odds of surviving being ventilated at that point in this history of this virus were pretty low. And from that point, I said, if you're going to get on with living or get on with dying, you need to breathe in as if you're smelling a bouquet of your wife's flowers from her flower garden. And you need to start exhaling as if you want to blow out 62 birthday candles in December. So I adopted this month, and I've been doing this motorcycle racing for 45 years where I breathe like this, but it's automatic. I've never had to
Do it consciously.
Monastically.
Yeah.
And I was like a monk. I put everything outside of my mind and just
Concentrated on breathing.
Concentrated on breathing. And about 4 hours later, my oxygen levels went above 90. And then they slowly started dialing me back half a unit of oxygen at a time. Doctor came in Tuesday night, and I said, what have I got to do to get out of here? He said, well, you got to sit your butt up on the edge of this bed. Like that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I said, what else? He said, of course, you got to walk to the bathroom, and then we'll see how that goes, and then I'll downgrade you from ICU. And that happened Thursday morning. So, I get a little emotional about this because people were caring for me, but nobody was caring for my family. I don't know how your viewers are who happen to be men, but we're not the first people to raise our hands and say, take me to the doctor or take me to the hospital. That's just not, it's not in the Folwell DNA. Maybe other men, they just say, I'm ready to go. But, when your family drives you up, it's not like, here's your toothbrush and here's all your things you'll need. You get out of the car and you kiss them goodbye, and then you go into a protocol, and that's it.
And you might never see them again.
Yeah. And I now know by reading my wife Cynthia's morning pages of what kind of information they were getting back from the doctors. And when I get emotional, I don't think about what almost happened to me. I'm just constantly thinking about what really happened to them.
Wow. What a story.
Yeah.
I'm glad you made it.
Thank you.
I'm glad you focused. When you put your mind to something, you can make it happen. I know that. That's what makes you a great state treasurer, and that's what made you get through COVID. So,
well, I'm asked. When I got out of the hospital a few weeks, I came back to work about 2 weeks later in Raleigh, and people kept asking me, how are you doing? Are you back to normal? And as I said to you earlier, I have the energy of a teenager. I'm very blessed to have that. But about 3 weeks after I got out of the hospital, I found a pre-Egg McMuffin coupon that had expired while I was in the hospital. and it upset me. Now, this is not a BOGO. We all know our BOGOs.
Yes.
This is a free one.
Buy one, get one.
No, this was a
free one. Without buying one.
And I said, if that's gotten my attention, I'm almost back to normal. And that really happened. But I'm really glad. And
funny.
It just reminds me of what Muhammad Ali has always said, is especially toward the end of his life, is don't count the days, but make every day count.
That's a great place to end. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad you brought up the coupons too, because I've always known you to have a coupon in your pocket to get a discount at a restaurant, and that is the guy I want to be my state treasurer, the guy with the coupon in his pockets.
Well, thank you, and people can learn more about the Treasurer's Office. By the way, go to nccash.com. We have $750 million of things that belong to people at nccash.com. We gave $600,000 last year to a lady who was the beneficiary of a life insurance policy. How would you ever really know if somebody had designated you a benefit, like if you designated me as your beneficiary for life, if you never told me, I would never know.
Right.
So go to nccash.com, and of course, as I'm reapplying for the job of state treasurer, you can go to the website also.
Yes. Well, I did want to remind our viewers that Dale is running for re-election this year as our state treasurer. And I think you can see from tonight's interview why he's so qualified to hold the job. And on behalf of the North Carolina Values Coalition, I just want you to know, Dale, that we wholeheartedly endorse you as a candidate, and we hope you win your re-election. And so as you go to the polls in November, I hope you'll remember Dale Folwell for treasurer. And you can go to his website and sign up to volunteer or give him a donation. I know he needs those. And his website address is dalefolwell.com. So
FOL.
FOL.
WEL.
Yes, not FAL.
Right.
So if you've enjoyed tonight's program, please be sure to go to our website at ncvalues.org, where you can watch previous programs, and we'll see you again next week on Wednesday night. Thank you so much, Dale Folwell.
Thank you.
Which of these issues do you care about? What if you could influence how they were legislated? What if you could impact the outcome of the next election? What if you could change the course of America?